Hi everyone, welcome back to Feather Stitch House. My name's Rebecca and each week on this channel I upload videos about embroidery and textile art to help you get creative. Now in our midweek videos we've been creating lots of different things and I'm trying to start some new series that we can keep going with month by month as the year progresses. Last week I started working on our stitch alphabet, and that is going to be a series of videos where we explore embroidery stitches that start with each letter of the alphabet so that we can make some stitch samplers and keep a record of the stitches that we've learnt as we go along. If you didn't see that video, I will put a link in a card at the top of the screen and in the description below so that you can go back and watch it if you think it might be useful. So this week we're going to start something new that maybe we can keep ticking along indefinitely because there is a world of material out there for us to use. And I thought it might be nice to explore some patchwork. Now, patchwork has been around for centuries, and originally it was a way of reusing very expensive, precious fabrics once they had worn out and were no longer fit for their original purpose. So women, mostly women, would harvest fabrics, piece them together to make something new, either something to furnish their home or a new garment. And this tradition has its forms from all over the world, and hopefully we'll be able to have a bit of a global tour and learn from lots of different cultures and traditions. Thought we'd start really simple though with some sources of inspiration for me, some books that I have in my collection that inspire me with patchwork, and some of the most straightforward patchwork there is. The first patchwork I learnt, and that is English paper piecing. This is really straightforward, totally beginner friendly, and I believe that you can get a really good finish every single time. So if you want to stitch along, gather some fabric and thread, a pair of paper scissors, some bits of paper and maybe a template to draw around, and let's get stitching. Right, so I thought another project that we could have ticking along during our midweek videos is some patchwork. Now last year through Winging It we made our quilt. If you haven't seen that, I will just put some footage over the top and I will link the playlist to that at the top of the screen so that if you fancy going back and having a go at the garden quilt, it's all there and will be indefinitely. So yeah, all the tutorials are there, do go and check that out. But I thought we could have a go at a little bit of pieced patchwork. So a lot of what we did last year was hand stitching, and I thought it might be nice to carry on that but do some more pure quilting without quite so much embroidery. So we might add a little bit of top stitching here and there, but if you want to do some more simple patchwork rather than hand embroidering everything, this might be the way forward. And I had a look on my bookshelf. I've picked up some books and I've got a new one recently. So these are books that I've just collected over the years. I've no idea how many of these are still in print, but I will have a mooch and see if I can find them anywhere. So the first one is this patchwork quilting book. This is Company's Coming book. I think this is based in America. Some of the projects look a little bit dated now. I've had this for a long time. The beautiful thing I think about patchwork is that you just adapt the colours and bring it right up to date with what fabrics you use. So there's 52 projects in this book and they range from fairly simple things to more advanced. So you've got a tea cozy and coaster. There's some applique stuff, and I like this set of coasters because it's 4 different variations on the log cabin. So we probably will have a go at those at some point. Quite like this wonky star. I know that this patchwork design has a name. I don't know all the names of the patchwork. That's why I'm looking forward to having a go at some of these. And then you've got some Dresden plate designs. There's loads in here. Flying geese. I like this kind of offset flying geese. This probably is my favourite project in the whole book. Don't know if I'll ever make anything that big, but let's see. And this is based on foundation paper piecing, which we'll give that a try at some point. Something with denim. I mean, there's all sorts, loads of ideas, and I really like, what I like about this book is the way that you get all the templates built in, and everything is really well diagrammed. So if you look at the Dresden plates, it shows you what you're going to get in the end. But there's loads of really clear diagrams and explanations, and you get all your list of materials, and then you get told what your finished block size should be, how many blocks you need to make, and everything is really well explained. The second book is fairly simple. This is super fast quilting projects. So these are quilt projects that come together really quickly, and are most of them are on a much smaller scale, so you get things like this pin cushion. You can tell by the style of the book that it's quite old. So again, we've got a log cabin cushion, and all of these are built around styles of patchwork that go back a long way. That's your 3-panel cushion. I have made a quilt for my daughter based on this. So you just put jelly roll strips together and then cut them down and then rotate them so that some of your blocks go vertically and some go horizontally. It looks really nice. So there's all sorts in there. Pillowcases. I love this crazy patchwork thing. We're going to have a go at that at some point as well. So again, lots of much smaller projects, so rather than big quilts. This is Patch by Kath Kidston, and this came with a free kit to make the Dresden plate. Never made a Dresden plate before, so that was super easy. It was really well explained. These are my cushion pad, and then I put the ruffle. This is just a piece of ribbon that I gathered up. I just thought it looked really cute, so that's the free kit that came with that. And again, she's great photography in this book. So I made a cushion like this for my mum when my grandma passed away. I used a lot of her embroideries and made a little patchwork cushion. And again, there's loads and loads of really simple designs and guidance on embroidery stitches. Love this Suffolk puff pillow. Just think it's great. So again, if you like Kath Kidston fabric, love that tweed bag made out of tweed scraps. That was great. Bit of red work, bit of cathedral window. I've never tried that. There's loads in there. So that's a great book as well. And I have purchased something new for myself, which I don't often do these days, but this has rocked my world. If you haven't come across this, it's all over the place on Instagram and online, and I couldn't not get it. So this is Alice Caroline's 100 quilt block sampler, and this is, I won't show you the whole book, but it basically works up this lovely quilt. It's based on rainbows, and she's put together, this is my favourite page actually, she's put together 10 Liberty Tana Lawn rainbows that are used throughout the quilt, and she tells you which fabric to use to get exactly the look of her quilt. There's some gorgeous fabrics, just beautiful, just as a showcase of Liberty's fabric range. Just love it. But I thought we could have a go at some of these. So she starts with really simple blocks and then advances through to things like this, which are pieced and appliqued pieces, and then at the end she groups them by section. So she starts with machine piecing and then she gets on to applique and things like that. So that's a sort of step-by-step 100 quilt blocks, and I thought probably won't make all of those, but between all the books there are definitely 100 block variations, and I thought it would be fun to just see how many different types of pieced patchwork blocks we could make as we go through this series. There are loads on the internet that we can make use of that are just freely available, so there's plenty to have a go at. I thought we'd start though with just something really straightforward, and that is English paper piecing hexagons. This is really easy to make. I made this years ago. It's a lavender bag and it still does smell a little bit of lavender. It doesn't fill the room anymore, but I had a little strip of ribbon and I basically just made a 7 hexagon. It's like a grandmother's flower garden pattern, and then made the same on the other side. Just if you do make this, after today's video you'll know how to make this. The only thing to be aware of is that you need to reverse the order. So this one, if you look at the patterns, this was a little shirt that my son had when he was a baby, and this was some fabric that was gifted to me. This is part of my grandma's, one of my grandma's scarves, and I love the fact that I can remember where they all come from. So this was bought for me from my mum as part of a craft box that she got me for Christmas. So they hold a lot of really sort of fond memories for me. But if you look at this checkered pattern, that one's at the top. This time I'm going anti-clockwise with the other patterns, and if I flip it over, they go clockwise. So how does she know this? Could she possibly have made 2 identical panels and realised they didn't fit together? I think she probably could have done. So and then I just found some tiny buttons to put on the joins, and just really cute. This would work up in no time at all. Just filled it with a little bit of pillow stuffing and put some lavender in. I'm getting, because I'm squeezing it every now and again, I get a waft of lavender. It's lovely. So I thought we could work with Hexies today. The other thing that inspired me is an ongoing project that I have been working on for absolutely ages. Eventually it will be a double bedspread, but I'm such a long way off. So this is Japanese yarn dye fabric, and I buy it as hexagons. You can get them in lots of places. They're available on Etsy. If you don't mind waiting for them, you can get them on some of the Chinese shopping sites. Depending on your ethics of that, it's entirely up to you. But these are little hexagons made out of kimono cotton, and lots of them are double-sided. This stuff features on and off in lots of pieces of work. So they are yarn dyed fabric, so rather than having a print printed onto the weave at the end, these are spun with coloured cottons, and so they often work back to front. Not always. So this one is a strawberry design, and you get this ropey looking arrangement on the back, but you get little strawberries on the front, and this one as well. You get these little polka dots, but you get these long sort of fibres on the back. So I buy them pre-cut, but it's not difficult to cut them. I also get pre-cut hexagons. I used to cut my own, and they're fairly easy to cut because they're straight lines. Curved shapes are harder, and they are reusable. Depends how you piece, but they are reusable. But this is coming together so beautifully. I just love it. It's sizable. There's over 100 blocks on here, but because they're quite small, these are 1-inch hexagons, and the way that's measured is it's the length of one side. So it's not the length across or anything like that. It's the length of the side, and you can get 4-inch hexagons. You can got some really tiny ones Where are they? I've got some 1 centimetre hexagons here, or 1/4 inch. They are. I won't open these because they'll go everywhere, but they're really tiny. And I sometimes use those for embellishment, but this is such a lovely project because I have a little tray with my threads in it and a little mini jam jar that I put all my thread ends in, and I can take this with me in the car or whatever, and I can make up some hexies like this and then stitch them together. And I tend to stitch it together in smaller pieces, like this one's one that I've got on the go. I can stitch it together in a smaller piece and then add that on when I'm ready. So I can add that on, and you can just grow it as and when you've got a little chunk to add on. And it saves, I think, having these long periods of just stitching up and down the zigzag edge. I tend to, because I'm reusing the papers, once one of my blocks is surrounded, I take the paper out so that I can use it again. So I've only ever got papers in the outside edge, and I know lots of people have different views on that. Some people like to leave all the papers in. It saves me papers. So so that's the project. So I thought I'd show you some ways that you can approach this. I'll show you the way that I learnt originally, and then I'll show you some other ways that I've learnt over the last little while. So let's take some, let's do this little spotty one. What can we do? It really doesn't matter. Just take 3 off the top. I didn't want them to all be the same colour. There we go. Let's find a nice blue one. There we go. So I can show you 3 different ways of piecing, and then we can put them together. So the first thing you need is a brightly coloured thread, so a thread that's going to show up on all of them. And I'm going to use one of my previously used pieces, and you can see this is near the end of its life. It's got lots of pinpricks in it, but it'll be okay to use for this. So I'm just checking that my fabric works both ways round. It does. And I'm going to put my paper at the centre of my hexagon. So this is just a piece of paper sitting on the top. If you want to, you can put a stitch through the centre. I'm not going to. I've knotted the end of this bright thread, and I'm just going to fold over the first side. This is a good one because it's got lines on it. So that helps me keep it straight. And I'm going to go through from what will be the front to the back of that piece. All right, so I'm just pinching it with my thumbs. If you want to, you can put a wonder clip, just hold it in place. I don't always like the weight of the wonder clip, but you can use it. Right, so I'm just going to stitch through and stitch back. I'm just putting a large tacking stitch, and I'm quite close to the corner now. So what I'm going to do is get my thumbnail in and just fold that corner over like that. And I'm going to catch it down with another stitch. So that holds that corner in place. So now I can move my wonder clip round. The advantage of a wonder clip is that sometimes when you're trying to get a nice sharp edge, nice sharp shape, the paper can move. So you pull the fabric over, but it pulls the paper with it, and so you end up on your final side with not enough fabric to catch the edge. So got to my next corner, fold it over and put a stitch across that fold. So I am stitching through the fabric and the paper. I get a lot of comments on this. Why are you stitching through the paper? I think it's just how you learn. There are loads of makers. If you come across Kate at the Last Homely House, she always stitches through. It's just how you learn, and I think this is the traditional way of doing it. This is the sort of ancient way of doing it. But we now have more resources available to us that have made an easier, have given some easier options. So if you're cutting your own papers, you need to use a thicker paper. So if you want to reuse paper, junk mail is quite good, like takeaway menus, things like that come through your front door. Catalogue paper is quite good. Some people use like old annual paper, you know, annuals that are printed each year for kids, the Beano annual or whatever. I know some people go to charity shops and pick up old children's annuals for not very much money at all. That paper tends to be quite thick. So I think just normal copy paper probably isn't going to be robust enough. I mean, you could get away with it, but you wouldn't ever be able to reuse those pieces. Right, so I'm back to the beginning, and what I want to do is go through to what will be the front and just make a little quilter's knot. And the reason we're doing this on the front is that these stitches, once we've stitched our pieces together, these stitches will be removed. So that's the first way that I can show you. I have to say it is my favourite way. I know it's time consuming because you stitch everything twice, but look how sharp those points are. It is just that fabric's not going anywhere. I think it just makes it really tight, really neat, and you get a really good finish on your pieces, and that paper's never going to pop out. So that's method one. Put that over there. So method two is also done with stitch. So let's get my pink thread again. Check my fabric. This is both sides the same. And again, we're going to put our little paper piece on the back. This time we're going to do stitches that can be removed but don't have to be. So I've put my block on the back again, and let's just clip it in place like that. So we're going to start in the same way and make a fold. I'm going to finger press it a little bit. You can use a seam roller if you want to, but again, time consuming. And this time we don't have to start with our knot on the front because we're only going to stitch at the folds. So I'm just going to take my needle just through the fabric. I'm not going through the paper, and I'm just going to put a little stitch over that fold, making sure I've caught the fabric on both sides. I want to catch the fabric on my first side, come up across the fold on my second side, and then go back to my first side and back up again on my second side. Now I go across to my third side, and I'm going to go in on side 2, out on side 3, in on side 2, out on side 3. So we're just putting a little stitch over the top of the fold. Now this is one where the paper definitely does move because there's nothing holding it to the fabric. So folded my side over, in on side 3, out on side 4, in on side 3, out on side 4. We go round to side 5, fold it over, in on side 4, out on side 5. I'm not going through the paper this time. Now on side 6. Like that. And then we go back to side one, and I'm just making sure that my pleats all fold the same way, and then they'll nest really nicely on the back. And when you've put your holding stitch on your last corner, you can finish off that thread. So that, the beauty is that when you stitch it together, that paper will just pop out. I'm not going to take it out just yet, but the paper will pop out and I don't need to do anything with those stitches because there's nothing visible on the front. So the stitches can just be left in. It's absolutely fine. So that's method 2. And method 3, I hardly ever use. And I can't find the right tool for this, so we're going to use an alternative. So the third method is glue basting, and I'm going to just use my fabric glue for this because I can't find my Pritt stick. A cheap Pritt stick is the best because you want something that doesn't hold too tightly. So like a supermarket brand Pritt stick would be like a glue, just an ordinary glue stick, and the lower quality the better because you don't want a really secure hold. But this time we're just going to lay our paper on top of the shape, and we're just going to put a little dab of glue, and we're going to fold over our fabric and hold it in place like that. I'd also not recommend this if your pieces are really small. So if you're doing those 1/2 inch hexies, I've tried this method with that, and the releasing of the glue causes all manner of problems, so I wouldn't do it. So I'm just putting a little dab of glue, folding my side over and letting the glue hold it in place, and this is called glue basting. And I'm kind of doing these in my order of preference. I hate glue. If you've been around for a while, you'll know I don't like using glue. I also don't like this one because you can't really do your nested folds at the end. So you've got one side that's got the 2 corners over the top, and I don't like that. But it's super fast, and there we've got our hexagon. You wouldn't know from the front, would you? So that's 3 ways of forming your shape. So we've got the traditional way where we stitch through the paper. We've got another stitched version where we just stitch across the folds on the back, and then we've got glue basting. Oh, look, see, that's lifted up already. Maybe I just need to give it more of a squeeze. And you can make up as many hexes as you like this. I've got a bunch here as well. So once you've got some shapes, we want to line them up right sides together like this, and you want to find the meeting point of the corners, and this time you want a neutral thread. So I've got a fairly neutral brown here. This is just normal machine cotton, and I've knotted the end, and they stitch together really easily. So I'm gonna, they're right sides together, so I've got both wrong sides facing me, and I'm just going to take my needle right through the corner. And you don't want to go through paper, you want to find the space in the fabric as the fabric's wrapped over the paper. So we're just going to go through, and I'm just going to stitch over that point once more just to make sure the corner is neatly joined. And then we're going to put in little tiny stitches that just catch the fabric on the edge. So we just catch it into that fold like that. Now obviously this is never going to be square, so if you want to make a square block you will have to make a hexagon panel that's bigger than your block and then trim off the excess, so you're going to end up with some half hexagons at the edge, and that is just the way of it. Alright, so when I open that out I've got two perfectly joined hexagons and you cannot see those stitches. I'll bring it up close. There's no visible stitching there, totally invisible. And I could actually probably stitch with the pink thread and you still wouldn't be able to see it. That's the joy of it. Right, so I'm not going to finish off. What I'm going to do is add in my next hexagon. So I'm just going to open the two out that I've stitched together and bring in my next hexagon. And I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm just going to start at the corners, and this is a miracle because these corners will always work as long as you match up corner to corner and make sure you're stitching really nicely into the corners. It will work every time. So just stitching through. But I love English paper piecing. I really love it. I love the fact that you can make any shape, which we'll look at in a few in weeks to come. That you can get perfect matches every time. There's no sort of missed corners like you do sometimes when you're machine piecing. Let me just interrupt myself. So at the end of the row, when I could just carry on and add another block here, but I'm just going to finish off my thread because I want to stitch along the other side of this red one. So I'm just going to loop through, knot off, and then I can go back and stitch along my next side just to join. So I'm just going to let that blue hexagon fold in a little bit, lining up my corners, and off we go again. So I'm going to start stitching right in the corner, and I find it at these points where three blocks join, I like to go back and join that original blue block with the green one as well, just so that I've got stitches that go from each block to each other block. I love that we can make any shape, that you get a really neat finish every time. I love how therapeutic it is because it's such a repetitive process. This is true slow stitching. Slow stitching is anything that is repetitive and meditative. It's hand stitching where you don't really have to think too much about it, so you can just zone out or be quite meditative in the way that you stitch. And I could literally do this for hours and it wouldn't bother me at all. It's a great thing to do in the car, on a long journey. You can sit in the garden and do this, just listen to the birds singing, sometimes put on an audio book and listen. It's portable, just take a few hexagons with you and you've got a sewing project to be doing wherever you go. You can go in your handbag, you can do it on the bus. It's just such a joy, and look at that join. I mean, it's just perfect, and that's nothing to do with my skill level. That is just the way English paper piecing works. It's just fabulous. So I'm just going to surround this glue basted block and then I'll show you what you do at the end to get rid of your stitching. Bear with me. Okay, there we go. So I have thought of a couple of other things to mention. I often get asked about my needles, so for this kind of work I don't tend to use an embroidery needle. This is, I think, a size 6 sharps needle, and I've got one that's like, no, I think it's more than that. I think it's maybe a size 8, and this one's a size 10 sharps needle. They're small eye, so your thread doesn't constantly keep coming out, and sharp point, so it's easy for piercing through the papers or finding the edges. And I do just use machine cotton, so I tend to use for the piecing stitches, the tacking stitches, I tend to use like supermarket cotton, if you know what I mean by that. So I don't use my special branded machine cotton, just ordinary same cotton. This is a great one for making use of old clothes that mean something to you, or that you don't want to give away to a charity shop if they're damaged or whatever. But they're nice fabrics. You can cut out sections and reuse them to make home furnishings, and this is a great way of using the threads that you get in like Christmas crackers, or if you get some supermarket sewing thread, that's perfectly fine. So once you're at this point, so I've got my little flower there, I'm just going to press it, and this does two things. First of all, it evens out the joins between your pieces, but it also sets the shape of them. So we can take out papers now and they'll keep their shape. So I've given it a good press from the front, just given it a good press from the back as well. And that means that I can show you what to do with your tacking stitches and I'll still have the shape. So always worth giving it a good press. Right, let's do this glue basted one first. So I've just got an embroidery needle, and all we're going to do is slide that underneath the fabric to just release it. Now I've used fabric glue, so the bond is a little bit tighter than it would be if I'd used a sort of supermarket brand Pritt stick or glue stick. I'm just sliding my needle underneath to release that glue like that, and then I can hook my needle under and that paper will come out like that, and I can reuse that for glue basting. That would be fine. So it's a little bit risky because it's not surrounded, but I'm just going to, this is why I put the stitch on the front, because if I joined that onto a larger piece I would struggle to, in amongst all of this, to find the knots. So we just lift up the knot on the front and snip it off. So I obviously ran out of thread on this one. I've got 4 knots. So we take out the knots on the front, and then I can get my large needle back, and I'm just going to hook out stitches. I tend to use the eye of the needle because I'm less likely to damage the fabric. Oh yeah, there we go. Just wondering why I got 4 knots, because it was all just coming out, but there are 2 pieces of thread there. And again, I can just lift out that paper, and that's why we press it. So now I've got tight corners, I can join another piece onto that, it won't be a problem. And for these ones that are joined at the corners, we don't need to take the stitching out, we can just lift out the paper, and because we didn't sew through the paper, that comes out, and so still got the flexible fabric but no stitches to worry about. So if I wanted to make the lavender bag, I just make 2 of those and stitch them together. Probably leave the papers in for most of the time until I'd stitch 2 pieces together, and then you leave just a V open and stuff it, and then you can close up the gap. So my stitching is really ropey there, but it was made many years ago. So that is English paper piecing, and I hope you've enjoyed that. It's really easy. If you've never done any piecing or patchwork before, this is a great place to start, because I genuinely believe you can't go wrong. You get a perfect, neat finish every time, and as long as you're patient and go through the process, you should have no trouble at all. So our first little bit of patchwork is English paper piecing. I really hope you'll give it a go. Thanks so much for watching. If you want another paper piecing project, I will put a video here, and I'll put a different kind of project down here for you to have a go at if you are at a loose end and want to sew. Have a ton of fun with your piecing, and I will see you soon. Bye.